Eruvin, page 3, some introduction. The core belief in the traditional Judaism is the sanctity not only in the Torah, in the scroll and its words, but even letters, meaning we believe that every single letter carries a deep meaning. Let me share with you some word of introduction that Nachmanides, the Ramban, wrote, the man that lived at the 12th century, in the introduction of the book of Bereshit, the book of Genesis. עוד יש בידינו קבלה של אמת. We also possess a true tradition that the Torah and its entirely כולה שמותיו של הקדוש ברוך הוא, consist entirely the name of the Holy One, blesses He Hashem. שהתיבות for the words of the Torah מתחלקות לשמות בעניין אחר. They entirely consist not only the name of God, but can be divided in a different way into other words, which means other names. Meaning, for example, you take the word Bereshit, so you can play around with the separate, and you said Berosh Yitbareh instead of Elokim, El Hayam. You can twist it around the word if you change the location of those letters. So he said, however, we have to remember, ומפני זה ספר תורה שטעה באות אחת. That is why a Torah scroll, which is, if the scribe erred by spelling one single word in the wrong way, can be pasul, can be invalid. The same way, כי זה העניין לחייב אותנו לפסול ספר תורה שיחסר בו וו אחד. This matter requires us to invalidate a Torah scroll that it's missing even a single letter, a single vav, for example. In the word otam, even otam you can spell it without, but if it's missing, it's invalid. So that's applied to both ways, if it's in a addition letter or missing letter. אף על פי שאינו מעלה ולא מוריד כפי העולה במחשבה, even though it will seem that such a deviation should not make any difference in any way or another, but that's crucial for the kashrut, for the validation of Sefer Torah, that is not even one single letter missing. וזה העניין שהביא גדולי המקרא, and this is the concept that induce the meaning the Masoret, the master of the scriptural text, למנות כל מלא וכל חסר בכל התורה והמקרא, to enumerate each full quote unquote and each quote unquote incomplete spelling in the entire Torah and the rest of the scriptures. Some of us today, they have computers, like Bar Ilan University and others, they have computers, but the key is ולחבר ספרים במסורת עד עזרא הסופר הנביא, and to compose book about that Mesorah, that tradition, going back to Ezra the scribe, the prophet that exerted himself in his endeavor. So, and he ended by saying, כמו שדרשו מפסוק ויקראו בספר תורת האלוקים מפורש ושום שכל והבינו במקרא. There is a text the sages expounded in the Talmud tractate Megillah, page 3, that from the verse they read from the scroll, from God's Torah, that's the book of Nehemiah, clearly applying wisdom, elucidating the text. ונראה שהתורה הכתובה, and it's appear that the Torah which has been written in black fire upon white fire before creation was written in this manner that have mentioned. So he speaks here a little Kabbalah, but the key point is when he describes white fire and black fire, it's a lot of euphemism. but the whole idea is that there's a level of godly sanctity involved with holy sacred names of God and more, and the esoteric part of the Torah that apply in a philological manner to every single letter of the Torah, the importance of the letter. Why I share with you this word in introduction? Because in our discussion today we focus on concept of or, like we started yesterday. And in order to go deeper in that concept and understand the implication, the Gemarrah, the Talmud, use many sources. And all those sources connected to the concept of letters, of word. Soon you see that it goes so deep, even this one single letter makes a big difference. So keep this statement of the Nachmanides in mind before we go to our discussion, which mainly discuss the importance of language, which is the difference between using vernacular language, inappropriate language, and the proper decorum. It's applied not only, the Talmud soon explained to us, when he's speaking formally, but also when a person recognized by his or her informal speech, and also a lot of application from different sources to different avenues of our lives. So we are on page 3 on the top of the page. Mativ Mar Zutra, דקדוקי סופרים said Mativ. Mativ Mar Zutra המפלת או ל-81 בית שמאי פותרים מקומן בליל מחייבים. This is the Gemarrah, the Talmud, Untitled Chapter, page 7b. It's a discussion about situation of miscarriage. Never happened to anyone, but that's the reality of life. Some introduction. The Torah tells us there are certain days of state of impurity for women after delivering a baby. The Torah, not the rabbis, differentiate between baby boy and baby girl. They said that if the women deliver a baby or miscarriage a baby, there are certain days that we count for male, which means it's 7 days from the day of the delivery, and at the 8th day she's going and duck himself in a mikveh, and then she's pure for the rest of the 33 days, which means from the 8th day until the 40 days, and even she incur blood, it's already considering pure blood, which we need to discuss, that not make her impure. If she deliver a baby girl, the Torah said that we count 14 days, which means we start from the day 50, and then we have to count 66 days, which turn to be 80. If you want to see the source in the Torah, you're welcome to read book of Vayikra, Leviticus, chapter 12. After 40 days for the baby boy, or 80 days for the baby girl, then she returned to her original status. So from that point, if she see blood, return to the status of impurity. And that's basically the basic halacha. That's the way they used to do it in the Talmudic time. Later, hopefully, with time allow, we go to the practical halachot. You see how they remind. You already are 194 Kuf Tzadik Dalet speak about our days. Anyway, for the baby boy, for example, after 41 days, or for the female after 81 days, she needs to bring, the Torah said, a special sacrificial offering. The Talmud said in Tractate Kritut, page 9, that those offering apply even if she became pregnant again during those days that she is in a state of purity. So the question is, does she need to bring two separate offering or not? So there is a discussion. Now, the big discussion is what happened at the day of 81. If she needs to bring a separate offering, an offering, or not at all. We talk in particular at that night of the day of 81, since the Torah speaks up to the 80 days. So what we said here that Hamapelet, the woman who miscarriages, or, remember the word or of the 81st, and that sense we don't know if or, so far we see a lot of sources, if does that mean the night of the 81 or during the day of the 81. Beit Shammai exempt her from bringing a separate sacrificial offering, because soon you see the whole reason, and Beit Hillel require her to bring an offering. Rashi, explained to us what's the idea. Rashi said, imagine if she have a twin babies, and that twin baby, it's happened to have it at the eve of the 81. So now, yes, in one hand is a completion of full 80 days. So you think she may need to bring an offering. Beit Shammai said no, you don't need to bring a separate offering. And they said that it's like a separate. And Beit Hillel said no, you do need to bring, because between for example, if it's the 40 days, even it's not reached that point, or 81 days, since the Torah used the word uvim lo'ot, so uvim lo'ot meaning the past, it's not relevant. Uvim lo'ot, when it's completed. So that time, even if she miscarriages, she needs to bring a separate sacrificial offering, since it passed the day of the exemption. אמרו להם בית הלל לבית שמאי. בית הלל said to בית שמאי, מה ישנה אור 81 מיום 81? Look at the language. They said, what's the difference between or of the 81 to the day of the 81? So what do you understand from this discussion? אם שיבה לו לטומאה לא ישבה לו לקורבן. If you compare in a sense of ritual impurity, why they don't have to compare it in a sense of bringing offering, which is even she miscarriage at night. So here you don't see the response. Rashi brings the response that Beit Shammai brings, but that's not our subject. Our subject was the concept of or. So the Gemarrah said, "Midekamar Beit Hillel Beit Shammai machna or 81 miyom 81." Because Beit Hillel said to Beit Shammai, what's the difference between or of 81 and day of 81? And you see that they juxtapose the word or with the word yom, with the word day. Shma mina, you derive from that the or applied to what?
Day.
Night.
Night.
Again, since Beit Hillel asked Beit Shammai, why, what's the difference between the or of 81 and the day of 81? So it means that they intend to say, indirectly, they alluded that the word or applied to the eve before the day.
Okay.
So now we're back to our subject. When we use the term or, by this source, applied to what? The eve, the night before. Another source. Meitive, we ask another objection on Rav Huna. יכול יהן נאכל אור לשלישי. The Torah said in the book of בעיקר, Leviticus chapter 19, ביום זבחכם יאכלו במחרת ונותר עד יום השלישי באש יישרף. So Rashi explained, when it's come to the offering of shlamim, so they have to eat it at the or of the third day. So what does that mean, or of the third day? Vedinu. We learn from Binyanav, which is one of the 13 principles of Rabbi Ishmael. Zvachim ne'echalim liyom echad, ushlamim ne'echalim lishneim. We have different korbanot, different offering. Zvachim, the Torah said in Vaikra in Leviticus chapter 7, that it has to be biyom korbano yachad, it has to be eaten at that specific day. Which means, what is the zvachim? For example, a daily todah, everyday offering, Pesach. So day, it's including the night after for that discussion. Shlamim, they have to be 2 days, which is the 2 days of the offering and the following day. Ma lehalan laila achar yom, afkan laila achar yom. The same way as that we say that night you can eat, meaning even that you can wait to the end of the night, but you're not allowed to left it for the following day. You have to complete, to consume, to be done with that offering that day. The same apply to korbanot shlamim, those offering, that you can eat it also at the second day, which apply to the night after the completion, at the end of the completion of the second day. So Talmud lomar biyom zivchachem ya'achel u'mimacharat, which means that day and the following day, va'notar ad yom, and whatever left at the night follow the day. Be'od yom hu ne'echal, ve'eno ne'echal lo shlishi. So we derive from that we can eat it when it's still day, which means during the second day, and it may not be eaten on or of the third day. So you see that Kodashim, it's night after the day, and it means as long as it's day, that's the way Shita Mekubetzet explains, and that's the way we understand from the Rashi here. So Yachol Yisaref Miyad. So what do you do if something left from the Korban? Should you, meaning the peace offering, so should it be burned immediately after the conclusion of the second day? Vediנו, we learn it from the Binyan Av, that concept. Zvachim, for example, the Todah offering, Ne'echalim liyom ve'layla echad, they be eaten on one day, at night. Ushlamim, and a peace offering, Ne'echalim lishnei yamim ve'layla echad, are eaten 2 days and 1 night. Ma lehalan techef la'achila srefa, the same way as they burn immediately offering, right after the eating, we have to burn it, which means at the morning of the second day, you have to burn what left. Afkan techef la'achila srefa, the same apply to shlamim, that has to be rightly so, right after the completion of eating, burning it, the night of the second day. Talmud lomar, va'anotar mibsar hazavach, bayom hashlishi ba'esh yisaref. They said in the Vayikra in Leviticus chapter 7, and if any remain of the flesh of the sacrifice on the third day, it shall burn with fire, which means bayom ata sorev v'eta sofo balayla. That Tosfot explained to us in the Bura Matchil Talmud lomar, that you burn it during the day, but you don't burn it at night. So it meaning of all for our discussion, mid ka'amar yehen echal or leshlishi, from this concept that we said it should be eaten on or of the third day, meaning alma or taush b'mina. So we derive from that or meaning
night,
evening. And the Gemarrah said shma mina. You learn from this that it's a evening. So now we continue with other sources. They didn't give up yet. They bring other sources to prove that it's night. You see, so far most of the sources go by the night. Tashma or shel Yom HaKippurim mitpalel sheva u'mitvadah. Now they speak about decorum of the prayer in the eve of Day of the Atonement. So they said in Ma'ariv, in the eve prayer, he has to make a 7 section of blessings, and then he confesses on his sin. As you know that always we divided our prayer to 3 different sections. You know, like in the morning prayer, we have the 3 brachot up to Akel HaKadosh, then from Atachon to Modim, and then from Modim to the end. So here, The first three and the third three of each prayer, it's like excluding the Musaf of Rosh Hashanah. That's the way we put it. And in Yom Kippur, in addition, we have the vidui, which is the confession, right? בשחרית מתפלל 7 ומתוודה. The same in the morning, 7, 3, 3, and the vidui. במוסף מתפלל 7 ומתוודה, in addition prayer did it. במנחה מתפלל 7 ומתוודה. בערבית, at the end of Yom Kippur, that's applied again. At that time, some say that that's applied to what we call today Ne'ilah, the conclusion prayer. It's depend the nusach. מתפלל מעין 18, which means the first three and the third three of the prayer, and the middle he does the Havinenu, the short version. רבי חנינא בן גמליאל אומר משום אבותיו מתפלל 18 שלמות מפני שצריך לומר הבדלה בכונן הדעת. Since you need to make the ברכה ופתח ונתנו during the כונן הדעת, so if he said Havinenu, he could not edit that Avdala, it's part of the Chonen Adat. So therefore you cannot make Havinenu, the short version, on Motzei Shabbat. So he said Alma. So because of that, because they use the term or Urtahu Shma Mina. So therefore you derive the or applied to what? Evening. So now we go back to our discussion. Tashma, the Tana de Shmuel, לילי 14 בודקים את החמץ לאור הנר. Shmuel said that לילי, what is the lay? It's the evening. The evening of the 14th of Nisan, one search for leavened bread. So what they said and using what? Using candle. So that's very much matching what we just said. Al ma'or orto. So it has to be or applied to evening. So now is the final word. We said Ela ben Ravuna or ben Rav Yuda dekula al ma'or orto. So now we wrap up all of our discussion with yesterday and today, that everyone agreed that the or applied to not light literally, but or applied to evening. Each of them speaks according to their minhag, their tradition. Be'atre, in the place of the Ravuna, karu naghei, they call evening naghei, but Rav Yuda karu leile. So they both intend one thing. So v'tana didan maitam lo ktana leile. So if that's the case, why the Tana in our Mishnah, what's the reason didn't explicitly teach that that's leile? In that sense, use the word or. So they said lishna me'al yoleka. Now we derive something very important, that he used a nice, fine language. Now listen carefully. Could Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, le'olam al yotzi adam davar meguna mipiv. A person should be careful of his expression, his mouth. Sometimes people get mad, get angry, or they feel too good about themselves and start using inappropriate language. We just said earlier, remember the quotation from the Ramban, from Nachmanides, how careful we have to be in every word, and the Torah is very prudent in every single letter. Now think about 8 letters that the Torah had. The Torah speaks in the book of Bereshit, in Genesis chapter 7, about Noach and all the animals in the ark. So the Torah used the term mina be'ema Torah, mina be'ema she'enena Torah, from the pure animal and from the animals that is impure. So hatme'ah have 5 letters: Hey, Tet, Mem, Aleph, Hey. Correct? Asher enena Torah is 13 letters. So it means that the Torah had 8 letters. That it looks like unnecessary, but they said here, Rashi explained and Tosfot explained here too, that the Torah wants to said clearly to teach us to use a fine language, not to use the language of Tme'ah, of impure, but use the language Asher Enena Torah. The Meiri said that there's other reason why they changed it, but anyway. Chizkuni which is one of the commentators on Torah, said that the word tehora, it's without vav, so it's like the 7 letters. But anyway, it makes a difference to emphasize the importance of each and every letter. of Papa אמר 9, שנאמר כי יהיה בך איש אשר לא יתור מקרה לילה. The Torah said in Deuteronomy, in Dvarim, chapter 23, when you have a person that among you, that man that was not ritually pure, by reason of what which happened to him by night. So you see here that the Torah can use just 3 letters, tameh. If you have among you someone who's not pure, tameh, 3 letters. Why the Torah used the word asher lo yeh tahor? You don't need to go to a Panama Canal to say something, you know, simple and short. But the whole idea is that the Torah want to teach us to use a nice language, even when you are mad, right? Ravina amar 10 vav de tahor. Ravina said letters because the word tahor is maleh. It's tet hey vavrich. So you have to add that vav. Now, why is all of that? You remember the Ramban I told you in introduction of the Torah? You see here even the letter vav, that how Ezra described and how important to value every single letter that carries a secret name of Hashem. And you think they add all those letters to emphasize the importance of talking to each other properly, not using vernacular or inappropriate language, especially in this manner. Rabbi Yaakov said, oh, you can go even further. 16, שנאמר, I can show you a place that they add 16 additional letters to teach us how important it is to speak nicely, to speak properly. Because when King Saul saw that in the famous story of Rosh Chodesh, remember David and Jonathan and Rosh Chodesh, book of Shmuel, chapter 20? So that King David said, כי אמר מקרה ובלתי טהור כי לא טהור. So instead of saying in 10 letters, מקרה טמא הוא, טמא impure, he used the word מקרה הוא בלתי טהור הוא כי לא טהור. So it's 26 letters, which is additional of 16 letters. So all of that want to show us that the importance of using a clean, pure, nice, respectful language when we speak. תנא דבר רבי ישמעאל, רבי ישמעאל teaches, לעולם מספר אדם בלשון נקייה. A person should speak in a nice language. שהרי בזב קראו מרכב ובאישה קראו מושב. When the Torah speak about ritual impurity, if a person have a discharge, male, or the women, when they have a blood coming out, so they use a nice words, such as for male, they use merkav, it's like the way that he sit, and the women, they don't want to use something that the opening legs, which is improper, so they use the word moshav, place that they sit. So again, Rashi explained, in order to show respect to women, they use sit instead of the other way. So the Tosfot said, you can go further by saying that using merkav, it's not only to show the respect, but it's also show that we should differentiate in level of impurity between moshav for male and female, again between a discharge of semen to discharge of blood. But anyway, ve'omer v'tivchar leshon arumim, in the book of Job, chapter 15, that speak about the wisdom, the shrewdness of the sages. So they use the term of nice language. Eliphaz rebuked Iyov, and he said to him, why you don't use the language of arumim, of the sages? Ve'omer v'dat sfatai barur milelu. So again, you see there that they're using a nice language. It's like separate some of the food. You take out the unnecessary or unclean, and you put in your mouth a nice food. So the same way you watch what you get in, the Chafetz Chaim tells us we also have to watch what's coming out, watch our tongue. Mai ve'omer, why you don't need the first source, why you need to bring more sources. So maybe we have to be careful in a text of the Torah, but maybe discussion among the sages doesn't have the same level. So they said, Tashma ve'omer ve'divcha lashon arumim. You see here from the second source that they use a fine language also in the rabbinic discussion. So he said, okay, Torah I understand, rabbis I understand, but come on, when I'm in my business, out there in a convention, or go there, or going around hanging out with my friends, why I need to use a nice fine language? So they said, no, ve'omer ve'dat sfatai barur milelu. Everything that come out of my mouth, the Maharsha said, has to be respectful and clean, not using other form of language. So the Gemarrah said, wait a second, ובאישה לא כתיב מרכב, והכתיב ותקום רבקה ונרכב ורבקה לבנים. They said in Bereshit, chapter 24, that Rebecca ride a donkey, and they said that she sat there. So, hatam mishum bi'atuta de gmalim orchau. So, the expression is that she is a very young girl, and she's scared of riding the camel. So the Torah explained that she sat on the side, which means in order to hold it strongly, she said, because other animals, Rashi said, are not so high, so they don't have this type of fear. But so women, if they need to ride, especially in those days, they need to ride, for example, donkey. So they don't sit while each leg is each side. They sit on the side and hold the donkey. In that sense, they sit on the side. But because it's the camel and it's getting high, it's frightening for them. So that's the reason they use this term to express the manner of, she said, they said in the book of Shmot, Exodus chapter 4, that Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, took his wife, Tzipporah, and his sons, and he, vayarkivem, used the word vayarkivem, on a donkey. So you see here also for female using mirkav. So they say Hatam over the story of Moshe and his children. Just turn the page 3b, Mishub Manav Orchau. So since we speak about open the legs, it's not the issue for male to ride versus women. That's the Rosh Hashanah explained on Rashi. They said about Abigail that when she tried to please David and beg him not to kill her husband Naval, that rebelled against Melech David, it's in the book of Shmuel chapter 25. So they said that she ride the donkey and used the word rochevet. Hatam in the Abigail, mishum beyatut leila orchau. So she afraid that at night something happened. It's riding at night is scary. So that's the reason why she ride in that manner. Not because of night, because she's scared of David. So that's the reason why she did it. She hold very strongly the donkey. There is a third version. It's nothing to do with night or David. She's just afraid of a mountain. You remember we said many times, those of you who serve in the army know that riding or walking at night, everything looks in a different size and different. You see a big mountain that very far looks like very close and vice versa. So that's the reason they use that term, that she rides the donkey in that manner. So we said previously that the Torah avoided itself from using the word tameh, impure, and use a pure language. You tell me that in Torah they don't use the word tameh, impure. They see sometimes they use that. There are two different entities. When it's needed, we use the nice pure language. When we must use a short version, because the Torah is very prudent with word, we use the short version, which means the best of the best is using both short and clean, but sometimes they have no choice, so they use the short to express that the key point, and therefore they need to use that term. Now we derive another thing, that the person should teach his student in a short way, which means if you have those acronym or abbreviation, so the student learn it quickly. Those who involved with IT know that they give a list of words and the procedures, and I'm teaching now in college, so one of the students gave a presentation of IT. So he brought a list of words, how they deal with troubleshooting, or how they deal with problems, and they have a procedures that it's all in acronym of letters, of words, how they deal it. So it means that everything has to be clean, nice, and short and sweet. That's Rashi and Tosfot explained. וכל אחד לכי ידד נינו משתיים בלשון כבוד, והרוכבת יושב לכידד נינו וכאמר רוכבת. You see again that the word רוכבת is not always respectful. So it said רוכבת כתיב, they subtract the letter vav, which means that it's shorter than יושבת, that yud vav shin betav, that it's longer, they add the vav. So basically we always try to use a clean, nice language. But if we can do it also short, that's the best. That's the Maharsha, that's the Ran explained, and Maharsha elaborate on that. We wish to have more time to go there. Anyway, that's very important story. Listen carefully to this story. The importance of speaking nicely. Chad, one of them said, Amar Shavitina Ishmada Kelevar Acher Mesankan. Oh, what we learned today, it's like a old tired pork, right? And the other one said, V'chad Amar Shavitina Ishmada Kegdim Mesankan. What we learned today, it's like a tired goat, which means we learned today something, and it's very complicated and deep. So that's make me tired. So one said it makes me like a pig tired, and one said it makes me like a goat tired. It's only a language of euphemism, right? But and since that Rav did not speak to the first student that used that word. So there are a few meforshim explain you there's a two way to understand. One said that it's nothing to do with using that specific word, but he was angry that he expressed it that like the learning, the teaching, the Torah was not important to him. In other words, using the term even as a fun vernacular language was insulting. That's one way. And there is another way that just because he used that term. But you see here how in those days they are very makpid, they are very strict of using certain language. The Khatam Sofer go in a Kabbalistic way to explain this, the whole concept of using those terms, but it's above the scope of our discussion today. Another story, two students sat before the great Hillel and studied Torah. One of them was a great rabbi by the name of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Some said it wasn't Hillel, was Rebbe. One of them was אחד אמר מפני הבוצרים בטהרה והם מוסקים בטהרה, ואחד אמר מפני הבוצרים בטהרה ומוסקים בטומאה. So again you see here the discussion over using either olives or grapes when they squeeze either the oil or the wine that's coming out of the grape. So one used the word why we don't use it in impurity, and one used the word really impure. So Amar, Rabbi said, Muftach ani bazeh שיהיה מורר בישראל. I'm sure that the one who used very nice, honorable, respectful language, one day will be a great teacher. And they said, ולא היה במועטים עד שהורהו רע בישראל. So some said, isn't that better that you use a short than to use long one? So it's a discussion. But anyway, it happens that the way he predicted, that student became a great teacher, which again shows you that the manner of speaking is crucial. Hanu Tlata Kahani. It was 3 Kohanim that he took part of the Lechem Apanim, part of the 12 rolls. If you pay attention, 7 Mile Market selling those rolls that have 12 together, which is a part of preparation for honor of Shabbat. because that's the way in the Beit HaMikdash from Shabbat to Shabbat they used to have. On Shabbat was a huge miracle that happened in the Beit HaMikdash, that it was always fresh, hot. The Gemarrah said in Yoma 21, and they divided between the Kohanim that served that day in Beit HaMikdash. The Mishnah in Sukkah 56 explain how they exactly divided. But anyway, they have 12 rolls. So those you see, we have the blessing of the Chalot, the rolls. 12, you see the source. So anyway, one, אחד אמר לו, הגיעני כפול, ואחד אמר הגיעני כזית, ואחד אמר הגיעני כזנב על טעה. So one said, I need to get a kfol, which means like very small amount, and one said dry fig, and one said like the leta'a, the tail of leta'a. What they said in English? What is leta'a? Anyway, so one is to eat the offering, the Binchat Chinuch said, and one is to not to leave anything left over. What is leta'a? The tail of what?
Laser.
Laser, thank you. So, but koach rav matzu bo shemes psul. So they check the lineage of that Kohen, and they found something in his lineage that it's not good. So again, how they find it? Because of the language that he used, improper language. So they found out that he is invalid for kehuna, he's a halal. You know, halal is someone who has some in his lineage, some of his process wasn't involved in the proper way. Ve'atnan, we learn in Mishnah Kiddushin, page 76, in importance of checking the spouse before they getting married. En bodkim min hamizbeach ulemala. So they speak about the altar. If you need to search the source of the potential, the wife, so you have to check where it's coming from. So they use that term, which apply to the source of lineage, but they don't use certain words when they speak about searching the lineage. The Gemarrah reply with two answers. Just for those who are not sure that they understand, let me elaborate just in a moment. A person that wants to marry someone, so he needs to check in advance. He needs to hire our well-known David Cohen, the detective, right, to search if she is not mamzeret, if she's not, if it's any issues applied to the life before they get encountered with each other. So some said that that's apply only for the Kohanim, in order to check that she's not part of the psulei kehuna, the Tosfot said, from the invalid of kehuna. So they need to check several generations before. There are some communities, it was a tale that family like Rappaport in Vilnius, they used to check and write some type of yichus book that tells exactly how they go back to the whole lineage of kehuna. But anyway, since the psulim, the invalid, come from one generation to another, and some people just by naming Kohen doesn't mean that they're Kohanim and more. So that's the idea. So they said, Lo tumar shemetz psul, ela ema shachatz psul. There is a difference between someone who has an issue with lineage and someone who is degraded or belittled the sacrificial offering, the importance of that of the tradition that passed, and the importance of the service. It is true that they check the lineage, but shanehatam, in that specific Kohen, the ihu the ara nafshei, that he is the one who created the problem, which means many times you see problems and no one cares or no one aware of. But the moment someone does something, all of a sudden you have an investigation. So here, since he used that language, people start wondering what's going on, and they start searching him, and all of a sudden it turns that he's not valid for service. He's not valid Kohen. Here is a story that they found someone by that manners, which means you see someone who behaves certain manners and you start searching about him. It was Aramaic, which is not supposed by Torah to eat the Paschal offering, that he went to Jerusalem and no one knows that he is not Jewish. It reminded me that after I got married 28 years ago, so I used to work for a short time in my wife's family. They own a very big company in Israel. So they have an employee who looks totally Sephardic Jew. And he wasn't Jewish, he was, I think if I'm not mistaken, Muslim Arab or Christian Arab, one of those, but not Jewish, definitely. And he used to tell us that he used to go around the Shuk, Machne Yehuda. It's the place in Jerusalem, the market. And the people are shouting, "Minion, minion, center, they need the 10th man for the minion." So they grab him, and he said, "I'm not Jewish." And they said to him, "You just try to run away from obligation. Come in, come in." And they force him in, and they promise him like a little food at Kiddush or something at the end of the service. And we asked him, "So what do you do?" He said, "I said Amen, Amen, Amen all the times." And people said, "No, you are from Tripoli, you are from Morocco, Egypt." They don't believe that he. And he said that he used to live in the, I think it is a Christian quarter in the old city. So sometimes on the way home he passed by the kotel. And he said the people used to grab him and dance with them, all these Jewish songs around them, and he sang it beautifully, and he hardly knows anything about Jewish prayer or anything. So it happens sometimes. Here they talk in the opposite way, that someone came and wants to eat from the Paschal offering, and they didn't know that he is Aramean. Amar, he said, Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera, Ktiv. The Torah said it about the offering in the book of Exodus, chapter 12. Kol ben echal lo yochal bo. They said any foreign, meaning a not fellow Israelite, should not eat it. Uchtiv kol areh lo yochal bo. Any person that is uncircumcised should not eat it. Ve'ana akachila mishufrei shufrei. And I ate, even I'm not circumcised and I'm not Jewish. So he said, Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera, Mi kasaf ulcha ma'aleh, who gave you that? Amar leil, who gave you the fat, the best part of the animal? He said, no. So he said, go back and ask them to give you the very nice fat part of the offering. So he came and he asked that question, but basically that's the part that we don't involve, right? Wait a second, this aliyah, it has to be on the altar, sacrifice. Who told you to ask for that? So he asked me to ask you to give me that. So even I participate like you with expense, I want that fed part. Amru, my hand the command. Who is this guy that he meant to say that the great Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera asked him to do it? But in those days they can do that, David. I don't know about our times. They found out that he is a cheater and unscrupulous, etc., and they executed him. Anyway. Bruce, you hear that? Anyway, שלחו לרבי יהודה בן בטרה, שלם לך רבי יהודה בן בטרה, דעת בן ציבין וצדק ברוצה בירושלים. They said, thank you, peace upon you, Rabbi ben Betera, that you are very far in a place called Netzivin, but your wing is going even to the Yerushalayim. So it means that you have the ability to see what's going on even here. Another example, Yochanan Kachakuka, Nafak leKiryat is a name, that he went to those villages to check the wheat. כי עתה אמרו לי חיטין נעשו יפות, אמר להם שעורות נעשו יפות. which means they use a certain nice language, and they said, what did you see the chitim yafot? Did you see the wheat? He says, no, I see the barley and nice. So he said, one second, I want to, so he said, אמרו צאו בשר לסוסים ולחמורים. So they said, go and tell the horse and the donkey. דכתיב, they said in the book of Kings, chapter 5, אסורים ותרם לסוסים ולרחש. So they said, מה יבל אליהם? Why they make fun of him? So they said, אשתקד נעשו חיטין יפות, because last year wheat crop developed nicely. So therefore we understand indirectly that this year it wasn't nice. Iname adashim nasu yafot. Alternatively, he could have said that this year the crop of lentil, which is also food for people, was developed nicely. So you see, the Khatam Sofer said that number one, the Torah wants to speak about the value of Eretz Israel and its product. Also, they want to speak about the importance of expression. It has to be in a respectful, nicely way. Now let's go to practical halachot. The first one is a Rambam. הלכות מחוסרי כפרה, chapter 1. המפלת אור ל-81. A woman who gives birth becomes pregnant again and miscarriages on the night of the 81st. We explained by the Torah the difference, if you remember earlier. After her previous birth, must bring a separate offering because, as we said, it's a separate time. Now, we also discussed today the Zman Achilat Korban, that the eating Korban has to be in a certain time, and whatever left, they have to burn. And now, we go to Hilchot Yom Kippur. That's Tur Or Chaim, chapter 6:19. In all 5 Amidah prayers on Yom Kippur, the evening, morning, the Musaf, the additional afternoon, and the Ne'ilah, the additional closing prayer, one recites 7 blessings, but in Yom Kippur we add the vidui and confessional prayer, which is an addition, because we said the structure is always 3 sections of the Amidah, but in those prayers of the Day of Atonement we add the vidui. So at the conclusion of Yom Kippur, one recite a standard evening Amidah prayer, and including the Havdalah in a 4th blessing, in Atachonen, we saw Atachonen Tanu, and that Shulchan Aruch Or Chaim 6:24. We also discussed today mainly the idea of proper language, but also to be short. One should always attempt to teach his students in the concise manner. That's the Rambam Hilchot Deot chapter 2. And Ein Bodkim Min HaMizbeach. So here we talk about the offering, and we said that when they check a sacrificial offering, when the court investigates family lineage, as soon as they find ancestors who serve as the Kohen in the Beit HaMikdash in the temple service, they need not investigate further, which means that's the end of the investigation. It can be assumed that a priest, a Kohen, whose lineage was compromised, will not have been allowed to participate in a temple service. So that's the Rambam in Chodesh Biyah 20. So the only time that they start investigating is when they see someone use improper language, etc., which cause people to open their eyes and start searching his background.